We still do houses. I say that self-consciously. It's terrible when we don't do as many as we used to do, and somehow word gets around that we don't do houses anymore. So I'm forever saying we'll often get some really nice person that rings up and says, "Oh, I hear you don't do houses anymore, but we just thought we'd ring anyway." And I say, "Well, of course we do. We do them lovingly." So just very quickly with houses, I'm just going to touch on two and spend more time on two. I think I showed you this house, the City Hill House. I think it was during construction when I came across for your national conference a few years ago, and it came out of an initial sketch I had on view lines, the idea of gathering together a broad passive panorama across Melbourne's river, the Yarra River, and then redirecting that, so as if we're channeling these views back toward a very tightly framed view across through to the city of Melbourne. And out of that sketch became this house. If you put the two side by side, you can sort of see that early fuzzy logic lasted the journey of making that house. And so here we're crimping the walls. We want to actually tighten, almost like shrink wrapping that view, so that view is bent around a corner but distorted, so the building distorts as we crush internal space around to actually go from one broad view to one very narrow view. And then spaces between sort of conform to that shape. The Vineyard House, again, I think I touched on. I think this also may have been in construction when I spoke last time. Again, being good observers, which most architects tend to do at the commissioning stage of their project. Here I said, well, there's already a structure inherent in that landscape that is man-made. It's these rows of vines. So our structure for the house, this vast veranda, takes exactly the pattern of this industrial patterning of the vines. So we took the rows of vines and set out the building accordingly, as if somehow the structure was suggested by that. Many other things that happened within. The idea of grafting was really my great analogy. I studied horticulture for 3 years after I finished my architecture degree, and the knowledge of the process of grafting was here we were budding on the bud stock of their life onto the root stock of the sort of working parts of the house, and it created this interesting collision between a very formally composed part of the house and one that was far more organic. Then a house near my house, the Yarra Bend House, and again I'll just show you one aspect of this house. It sits above the Yarra River in Melbourne, and it was built around one big idea, this central skylight. We'd had a disappointment when we designed this incredibly complex facade system on our University of Sydney project. This was one of the images that won the competition, but of course we were never allowed to build this facade. It was ruinously expensive. But rather than ideas getting bigger, we thought we can actually make a smaller version of this. So this idea was a facade that would encourage an east light, distract less north light, and exclude west light. So some invented geometry that would allow the ingress of light to be modified. So there's our sort of computer modelling, working with a friend of mine, a ceramicist, to make some first initial models to test. Then with the company that actually made it, a few versions of this, and then there it is in place. And it doesn't actually exclude west light. That was never going to work, but it does draw in and create these patterns. So the centre of this house, which is this massive staircase that everything comes off, even his study comes off the centre point, a landing in the middle. We intentionally put a landing in the middle of the stairs so his study could be in a part of the house that didn't share a floor plate with anything else. And so what it's really done is become like a vast clock. It actually changes the pattern of inherent in this central zone of the house throughout the times of the day and, of course, different times of the year. There's the study that comes off that landing space. And just some of the living spaces that come off that central area. Very sheer on one side, overlooking the Yarra River, and much more figured on the other side, looking into the suburban street. Okay, the other quick ones, I'll go a bit slower here with this house. This is a house, we have a very interesting and important artist, Gareth Samson, his wife also an artist, Christine Healy, in Melbourne, and this is a house for them. And it came out of, I hope I haven't told this story before, but it's one worth telling. I think, again, that idea of architects being sort of always being able to bounce back. It's something that seems to come with our training. Here was one of our first absolute disasters, as the first design was actually hated by our clients. It was, in my enthusiasm, we came up with this idea of these two radial plans, a his and hers plan that came together into the common spaces. They, with their studio life, brought them together. In the middle below, of course, as I showed it to them in all its full glory, he erupted with great anger to say that I designed a house that wouldn't take a single one of his paintings. They're massive works, they're about 4 metres wide, and of course all the walls are curved. There comes a point in architecture where you've never quite learnt. So out of that became... So what he said was that the National Gallery of Victoria have quite a few of his works. They obviously don't show them enough as Gareth would like. He said, I can't get the NGV to hang my fucking paintings, and you design me a house so I can't hang a single fucking one. So that was his... So I took that, and this house was a quotation to that. So for those of you who don't know, the National Gallery of Victoria, a vast big building built in the late 60s, has this one mighty arch as its great portal. So this house that actually then contains the working part of the diagram, a garage, been over 2 levels, their studio, an inner area that links, which is entry, a glass conservatory and a kitchen, and then their area of inhabitation to the right. But linking through that, you can just see the suggestion of it there on this working model is this vast arch. So from the outside, as is their nature, I don't know why they've got a beach house. I don't think either of them swim it out, though they ever touch the sand. They're the most urban people I've ever met. This is the least beachy one of our houses. So there's the frontage, which is actually the 2 studios in this linking area, all in black zinc. This is the front entry. Then coming to this house, this vast arch. I think it's 20 metres from start to finish. But to keep the arch pure, this area in the middle, this linking device, this black zone, which is the greenhouse, the kitchen and the point of entry, comes in and tucks in underneath it, and there's a series of skylights above this. We had to be very careful about ingress of light onto the paintings. So this became the story, and this house was entitled My Very Own NGV, My Very Own National Gallery of Victoria. He, of course, I can say this out of the country, Gareth now denies that ever took place, and he's very embarrassed about that, but it did. I was there. And so then the way this provides, again, interesting threshold spaces, the immediacy of the access to the kitchen. We're standing in the dining space here, to this vast door. Again, the house, Christine's biggest input into the project was the requirement for a whole lot of really significant ESD initiatives. We harnessed the sun's energy. We actually put so many solar cells on in this house. It harnesses half of the neighbourhood, powers half of the neighbourhood. We collect all the grey water. It does a whole lot of things. So this is this vast inner glass house right into the middle of the house. Through opening doors, we can actually draw the heat in when we want it, or close these doors with a series of dampers that open up and expel the air. So we're making good use of it. Here, it actually careers around, and then above that is Gareth's other little studio. He does a lot of computer work, and he's up the top there on his Mac, looking out over this vast ship of space. But then also allows us to tuck in little sort of spaces of solitude. This one space where Christine does meditation, looking out into the backyard at the base of the arch. So Christine in her studio with her paintings, and angry-looking Gareth in his, with his angry-looking paintings. I've often, at the end of our projects, done little sign-off pictures, a sort of presents to the client but they're all about knowing our clients. So at the end of it, there was the idea of this white unit. I've just got the 2 ends here. The white, rather anonymous-looking unit that cantilevers off the bedroom wall. On one side's Gareth and one side's Christine. So Gareth's kind of bloody obvious. You grab hold of the handle, and that's Gareth. It's really obvious and overt, and you pull it back, and inside was the most violent electric pink and sort of ruptured interior I possibly could. And that's sort of the nature of his character, and he uses that side. Christine was hard to get to know, sights unseen, so that there's an invisible. You can't actually see any means of how you open up Christine, but you reach in underneath it and pull an invisible handle back, and this sort of rolling, far peace, more tranquil personality comes out from her side. And the things I've now chosen to put in these two elements has been really quite a nice and engaging part of the process. So the kitchen, again, the dampers, we can open up these panels and draw air into the kitchen as we can through the big pivoting door. And then this glass house, which is another living space to the house. You can sit underneath particularly in temperate weather. It's the studio building. The arch is on the other side of the other black structure there.